the frozen heart of Dark Age Britain, where winter bites deeper than any blade. Survival is not a guarantee but a daily defiance. Welcome to History Orbit, where we plunge you into the raw, untamed past. A world where every spark of fire and scrap of food is a victory against oblivion. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button to join our journey through time. And let's step into the year 650 AD, into the village of Old Wythe, where a family fights to endure a merciless winter. Picture this: a dawn so cold your breath turns to frost before it leaves your lips, a sky heavy with the threat of snow, and a small waterland daub home where the embers of last night's fire cling to life. This is where we meet Beornwulf, a weathered farmer of 30 winters, his hands calloused from years of toil, his eyes sharp with the weight of responsibility. Beside him sleeps Sinberg, his wife, her face etched with quiet resolve, and their 3 children: Elfric, 9, Lefgefu, 7, and little Edith, barely 5, curled together for warmth under a single woolen blanket. Beornwulf's mother, Wulfrun, lies in the corner, her breaths shallow. Each won a battle against a cough that has worsened with the cold. The air inside is barely warmer than the snow-dusted world outside, the walls of woven branches and mud offering little shield against the wind that howls through tiny gaps. Beornwulf stirs, his joints aching from the damp, and reaches for the fire kit, a flint and steel that are his lifeline in this season of scarcity. The first spark fails, then the second, and a flicker of dread passes through him, for without fire, there is no hope, no warmth, no food, no defense against the dark. He strikes again, his fingers numb, until a spark catches the tinder, a faint glow blooming into a fragile flame. He feeds it carefully, knowing every twig is precious, every log a calculation of survival. The family begins to wake, their breath clouding in the dim light, their faces pale but determined. Sinberg rises, her movements precise as she checks the small clay pot where their dwindling barley stores sit, enough for a few more days if they ration tightly. Elfric, the eldest child, rubs sleep from his eyes and looks to his father, sensing the unspoken fear that hangs over them all. Starvation is a spectre as real as the frost that coats the door. This is Old Wythe, a cluster of homes huddled against a northern hill, surrounded by a low wooden palisade that offers meager protection against both weather and the whispers of Danish raiders, those sea wolves who strike even in winter's depths as told in the ancient Anglo-Saxon chronicle. The village is a world of wood smoke and survival, where every task, from fetching water to mending a cloak, is a step toward outlasting the cold. Beornwulf steps outside, the crunch of snow under his leather boots loud in the stillness, his breath a white plume as he scans the horizon. The fields beyond are barren, the harvest long gathered, and the forest looms dark, its branches heavy with ice. He feels the weight of his family's survival, knowing that winter in Old Wythe is not just a season but a test of endurance, where one misstep could mean death. Back inside, Sinberg kneels by Wulfrun, whose cough cuts through the quiet, a reminder of how fragile life is when the cold seeps into bones. The children huddle closer to the fire, their small hands outstretched, their chatter subdued by hunger. Beornwulf returns with a bucket of half-frozen water, his fingers red and stinging, and sets it near the hearth to thaw. The family gathers, their morning ritual beginning with a shared prayer, a blend of Christian pleas to the new God and older whispered thanks to the spirits of the land, a practice common in this time of shifting faiths as Bede records in his histories. Sinberg portions out a thin gruel, barley boiled with a pinch of dried herbs, each spoonful measured to stretch their stores. The silence at the meal is heavy, broken only by Wulfrun's labored breathing and the crackle of the fire. Elfric, ever watchful, asks if they'll have enough food until spring, his voice small, but steady, and Beornwulf exchanges a glance with Sinberg, both knowing the truth they might not. The question lingers unanswered as they focus on the tasks ahead. For in Old Wythe, survival demands action, not despair. Beornwulf takes Elfric to check the small storage pit beneath the floor, a damp hollow where roots and smoked fish are kept, guarded against mice and rot. They lift the wooden cover, the smell of earth and decay rising, and count the shriveled turnips and carrots, fewer than they'd hoped. Beornwulf's heart sinks, but he keeps his face calm for his son, teaching him to tally their supplies with a stick scratched into the dirt, a lesson in survival as much as arithmetic. Outside, the village stirs. Neighbors moving through the snow to tend livestock or repair roofs battered by wind. Then, Edric, a broad-shouldered man whose authority comes from land and loyalty, passes by, his cloak of wolfskin marking his status. He nods to Beornwulf, a silent acknowledgement of shared struggle. For even the then feels winter's grip. The community is bound by necessity, each family's survival tied to the others, a truth etched into the daily rhythm of Allwythe. Sinberg, meanwhile, tends to Wulfrun, crushing dried feverfew into paste with water, a remedy passed down from her own mother, though she knows it may only ease pain, not cure. Wulfrun's eyes, once sharp with stories of past winters, are clouded now, her strength fading. Lefgafu and Edith watch, learning the herbal crafty even as they fear for their grandmother. The morning stretches on, each task a thread in the fragile tapestry of survival, fetching wood, mending cloaks, checking traps for small game, all under the shadow of a winter that offers no mercy. Beornwulf feels the cold in his bones, but it's the uncertainty that weighs heavier, the knowledge that their stores are thinning, that Wulfrun's cough is worsening, that rumors of Danish sails have reached even this remote village. He recalls tales from elders, recorded in chronicles, of raiders who come not just for gold but for lives to burn and enslave. The thought sends a chill deeper than the frost, and he grips his axe. A farmer's tool turned weapon, its handle worn smooth by his hands. As noon approaches, the sky darkens, promising more snow, and Beornwulf calls Elfric to help secure the door against the wind. They work in tandem, father and son, tying leather thongs to reinforce the frame, their breaths mingling in the cold air. Sinberg lights a second small fire, a rare expense of fuel, to warm Wulfrun's corner, her hands steady despite the worry in her eyes. The family pauses, sharing a moment of quiet, the fire's glow casting long shadows on the walls, a fleeting warmth against the endless cold. Beornwulf looks at his children, their faces lit by the flames, and feels a fierce resolve to see them through this winter, no matter the cost. The village beyond their door hums with activity, the clatter of tools and low voices carrying through the snow. A neighbor, Osric, knocks, his face ruddy from the cold, bringing word of a meeting called by Edric at dusk. Whispers of raiders have grown louder, and the then wants every able man in the hall to plan defenses. Beornwulf nods, his mind racing, knowing that such a meeting means the threat is real, not just rumor. He sends Osric off with a promise to attend, then turns to Sinberg, who meets his gaze with unspoken understanding. They must prepare for worse than hunger. As the day wanes, the family continues their tasks, each movement deliberate, each resource measured. Elfric, eager to prove himself, asks to join his father at the meeting, but Beornwulf shakes his head, not yet, though he sees the boy's growing strength, a spark of the man he will become. Lefgafu and Edith help Sinberg weave a new rush mat, their small fingers deft despite the cold, learning the skills that bind their family to survival. Wulfrun stirs a voice weak but clear, telling a brief story of a winter long ago, when her own father faced a wolf at the village edge. A tale that holds the children wrapped, its lesson of courage sinking deep. The fire crackles, the wind howls, and the weight of winter presses closer. But Beornwulf feels a spark of hope, not from the fire but from his family's unity, their shared will to endure. As the light fades, he prepares to leave for the Then's Hall, his axe at his side, not as a farmer but as a defender of Allwythe. The story of this winter is just beginning, and what lies ahead will test not just their strength but their spirit. As the cold deepens and the shadows of raiders draw near, could you face such a winter where every choice is a gamble with life itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's see how Allwythe's tale unfolds. For the night is coming, and with it, decisions that will shape their fate. As the pale light of Allwythe's winter afternoon fades into a grey dusk, Beornwulf tightens the leather thong around his cloak, the coarse wool scratching against his neck, a familiar discomfort that grounds him in the moment. The fire in the family's Waterland Dorp home crackles weakly, its warmth barely reaching the corners where shadows pool like ink. Sinberg kneels by Wulfrun, whose coughs have grown sharper, each one a blade slicing through the quiet, her frail frame trembling under a threadbare blanket. Elfric, his young face set with a determination beyond his 9 years, stacks the last of the days. Firewood near the hearth, his hands red from the cold but steady. learning the weight of survival with every task. Lefgafu and Edith, their fingers clumsy with chill, weave rushes into a mat. Their chatter subdued as they steal glances at their grandmother, sensing the fragility of her life. Beornwulf catches Sinberg's eye, her gaze heavy with the unspoken truth that Wulfrun may not see. The spring, a fate all too common in winters like this, as Bede notes in his accounts of disease, claiming the old and weak. The family's morning gruel sits heavy in their stomachs, too thin to satisfy, and the storage bit's meager tally counted earlier with Elfric looms in Beornwulf's minder. Handful of turnips, a few smoked fish, not enough to outlast the snows. The village outside hums with the low rhythm of survival, the clink of a neighbor's hammer repairing a roof, the distant bleat of a goat, the crunch of boots on snow as men prepare for the then's meeting. Beornwulf steps to the door, his axe resting against the wall, its blade catching the firelight, a tool for both farm and fight in a world where peace is as fleeting as warmth. He checks the door's fastenings once more, the wind rattling the wood, a reminder of the cold that waits to claim any lapse in vigilance. Sinberg rises, brushing her hands on her apron, and begins preparing another pot of pottage, this time with a single shriveled carrot, its bitterness a necessity to stretch their stores. She moves with the precision of someone who knows hunger is a patient enemy, her hands steady as she stirs the pot over the fire, the scent of barley and herbs mingling with the smoke. Elfric watches her, learning the art of rationing, a skill as vital as wielding an axe in Aldwythe. Beornwulf kneels beside Wulfrun, offering her a sip of warmed water, her lips cracked and pale, her thanks a faint whisper that carries the weight of her fading strength. The children pause their work, their eyes drawn to their grandmother, and Sinberg speaks softly, urging them to continue, to keep their hands busy against the fear that creeps in with the cold. The family's unity is their shield, each member a thread in a tapestry stretched thin by winter's demands. Beornwulf stands, his breath visible in the dim light, and pulls Elfric aside, his voice low but firm. "You stay here tonight. Help your mother. The meeting is no place for a boy." "Not yet." Elfric's jaw tightens, a spark of defiance in his eyes, but he nods, understanding the line between courage and duty. Beornwulf feels a pang of pride, seeing his son's spirit, but also fear, knowing the dangers that may soon demand such bravery. The village beyond the door grows quieter as the light fades, the snow beginning to fall in soft, relentless flakes, blanketing Aldwythe in a silence that feels both serene and ominous. Beornwulf wraps his cloak tighter, the weight of the axe at his belt a reminder of the then's call, and steps into the cold, the snow crunching underfoot, the air sharp enough to sting his lungs. The path to the then's hall is short but treacherous, the snow hiding patches of ice that threaten to send him sprawling. He passes Osric's home, where a faint glow spills through the door's gaps, and hears the low murmur of voices, neighbors sharing what little news they have. Whispers of Danish sails on the horizon, a threat recorded in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle as early as this time, when raiders tested Britain's shores even in winter. The hall looms ahead, its timber frame dark against the snow, smoke curling from its roof, a beacon of warmth and authority in Aldwythe's frozen world. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of burning oak and the press of bodies. Men gathered on rough benches, their faces etched with worry and resolve. Edric, the then, stands at the far end, his wolfskin cloak draped over broad shoulders, his voice steady as he speaks of the raider threat, his words carrying the weight of a man who knows survival depends on unity. Beornwulf finds a spot, near Osric, whose ruddy face is set in a grim line, and listens as Edric recounts reports from a trader who saw longships off the coast, their dragon prows cutting through icy waters. The men murmur, some clutching spears, others gripping the handles of farming tools turned weapons, their fear tempered by the need to act. Edric calls for volunteers to dig ditches and sharpen stakes, defenses that may slow a raiding party, though all know a determined force could overwhelm Aldwythe's palisade. Beornwulf raises his hand, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. "I'll dig, I'll stand." And others follow, their pledges a chorus of defiance against the coming storm. The meeting stretches on, plans forming, tasks assigned. But Beornwulf's thoughts drift to his family, to Sinberg's careful rationing, to Wulfrun's weakening breaths, to Elfric's eager eyes. He feels the weight of his role, not just as a father but as a defender, knowing that winter's hunger is only the first enemy they face. As the men disperse into the night, Beornwulf lingers, catching Edric's eye. The then nodding in acknowledgement, a silent pact that they'll hold Allwithe together, no matter what comes. The snow falls heavier now, cloaking the village in white, and Beornwulf trudges home, the cold seeping through his cloak, his mind racing with the tasks ahead. Back in the house, the fire burns low, its light casting flickering shadows across Sinberg's face. As she stirs the pottage, the children asleep except for Elfric, who sits sharpening a stick with a small knife, his eyes bright with questions he doesn't voice. Beornwulf recounts the meeting, keeping his tone even, though Sinberg reads the worry in his eyes, her hand resting briefly on his, a gesture of strength shared in silence. Wulfrun stirs, her cough breaking the quiet, and Sinberg kneels beside her, offering another dose of feverfew, the bitter scent filling the air, a reminder of how little stands between life and death. Beornwulf watches, his heart heavy, knowing that winter claims more than raiders ever could, a truth etched into the bones of Allwithe's elders. The family settles for the night, the children curl together under their blanket. Elfric's stick now a crude spear, a boy's dream of heroism in a world that demands it too soon. Beornwulf and Sinberg sit by the fire, its glow a fragile barrier against the dark, and discuss the pig, their last major source of food, a decision that weighs like a stone in their chests. To slaughter it now would mean meat for weeks, blood for pudding, bones for broth, but it would leave them with nothing to breed in spring. A gamble between starvation now and survival later. Sinberg's voice is steady, we can't wait much longer, the children need strength. And Beornwulf nods, knowing the choice is no choice at all, but the act will be grim a task. He'll share with Elfric to teach him the cost of survival. The fire pops, sending a spark onto the dirt floor, and Beornwulf stamps it out. His movements automatic, honed by years of guarding against waste. He thinks of the then's words of ditches and stakes, and wonders if their efforts will be enough against men who sail through storms to steal lives. The village sleeps, or tries to, under the snow's heavy blanket, but Beornwulf lies awake, his mind turning over the fragile balance of their existence, food, fuel, health, defense, each a thread that could snap with one misstep. He recalls a story Wulfrun told of a winter when Allwithe's granary burned, leaving half the village to starve, a tale that lives in the Anglo-Saxon chronicles' accounts of famine and loss. He pushes the thought away, focusing on the sound of his children's breathing, steady and alive, a reminder of why he fights. Morning breaks with a cruel clarity, the sky a sheet of iron, the snow piled higher against the door. Beornwulf rises first, rekindling the fire with the last of the night's embers, his hands stiff, but practiced, the flint sparking easily now, a small victory in a season that offers few. Sinberg prepares another thin meal, this time adding a sliver of smoked fish, its saltiness a rare burst of flavor that brings a smile to Edith's face, though her eyes still dart to Wulfrun, who barely eats, her strength ebbing like the tide. Elfric helps Beornwulf fetch water, the bucket heavier with ice, their boots slipping on the path to the communal well, a shallow pit lined with stones, its surface frozen solid. They chip away with a stick, the cold biting their fingers, and Beornwulf teaches Elfric to wrap his hands in cloth to avoid frostbite, a lesson drawn from the hard winters of his own youth. The village is awake now, men moving toward the palisade with shovels and axes, women tending fires or checking traps, children scurrying with small tasks, their laughter a defiance of the cold. Beornwulf and Elfric return, the water sloshing in the bucket, and find Sinberg tending to Wulfrun, her face tight with worry, the feverfew no longer easing the cough. Lefgafu and Edith sit close, their rush mat nearly finished, their hands moving faster now, as if work could hold back their fear. Beornwulf sets the bucket by the fire, the ice already melting, and kneels beside Sinberg. His voice low, we'll need to decide about the pig today, before the meeting's work begins. She nods, her eyes meeting his, and they both know the slaughter will be tomorrow. A task that will mark Elfric's passage into the harder truths of their world. The day unfolds with the rhythm of necessity, Beornwulf joining the men at the palisade, digging ditches in the frozen ground, each shovelful a battle against earth as hard as stone. Elfric stays behind, tasked with checking the storage pit again, counting the roots with a stick, his young mind grappling with the math of survival. Sinbad tends to Wulfrun, crushing more herbs, her hands stained green. Her prayers a mix of Christian pleas and older chants, a syncretism common in all Wythe. As Bede describes in his accounts of early Christian Britain, the children work quietly, their tasks a shield against the growing tension, the village buzzing with the undercurrent of fear, raiders, hunger, death, each a shadow that grows longer as the day shortens. Beornwulf returns at midday, his hands blistered from digging, his cloak dusted with snow, and finds the family gathered around a small meal, the pottage thinner now, the carrot gone. Wulfrun manages a few sips, her eyes bright with effort, and tells a brief story of a winter when she was a girl. When the village trapped a deer, its meat saving them from starvation, a tale that holds the children's attention, their eyes wide with the hope of such luck. Beornwulf listens, his heart heavy, knowing their own luck hangs by a thread, the pig their only buffer against the same fate. He looks at Elfric, who meets his gaze with a nod, ready for tomorrow's task. And Beornwulf feels the weight of teaching his son to kill, not out of cruelty, but necessity. A lesson as old as all Wythe itself. The afternoon brings more snow, the wind sharper now, and Beornwulf prepares to return to the palisade, his axe at his belt, his mind on the then's call to fortify. Sinbad stops him, her hand on his arm, her voice low if raiders come. What do we do with the children? And Beornwulf feels the question like a blow, his answer halting, we keep them close, we fight, we pray. She nods, her resolve mirroring his, and he steps back into the cold, the village now a blur of white, the palisade a faint line against the storm. The men work in silence, their breaths clouding, their tools strunking frozen earth, each effort a defiance of the raiders who may come. Beornwulf thinks of the whole, of Edric's plan, of the stakes they'll sharpen tomorrow, and feels a spark of purpose, not just to survive but to protect, to hold all Wythe against the dark. As the light fades, he trudges home, the snow deeper now, the cold a living thing that claws at his skin. Inside, the fire burns brighter, Sinbad having added a precious log, and the family gathers, their faces lit by the flames, their tusks paused for a moment of togetherness. Elfric asks about the ditches, his voice eager, and Beornwulf explains, keeping his tone light. Though his heart is heavy with the truth, they're to slow the Danes, to give us time. The boy nods, his stick spear clutched tight, and Beornwulf sees the future in his son's eyes. A future that depends on what they do next. The night settles over all Wythe, the wind howling, the snow piling high, and Beornwulf lies awake. His family is breathing a steady rhythm beside him, the fire's glow a promise of warmth. However fleeting, tomorrow will bring the slaughter, the sharpening of stakes, the weight of choices that could mean life or death. What would you do to keep your family alive in such a world, where every day is a gamble against hunger and cold? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's follow all Wythe's people as they face the dawn, where a single act of survival will change their path forever. The dawn in Old Wythe breaks with a cruel, iron-grey light, the snow falling thicker now, cloaking the village in a shroud that muffles sound and sharpens the bite of the cold. Beornwulf rises from the sleeping platform, his breath a white plume in the dimness of the Waterland Daub home, the fire reduced to glowing embers that offer little warmth. Against the frost creeping through the walls, Sinbad is already awake, her hands moving with quiet precision as she rekindles the hearth, the flint sparking under her steady strikes, a task she's mastered through years of winter mornings. Elfric, his 9-year-old frame taut with anticipation, watches his father closely, knowing today is the day they'll slaughter the pig, a task Beornwulf has promised to share. Not out of cruelty, but to teach the boy the harsh arithmetic of survival. Lefgafu and Egypt stir, their small bodies curled tightly under the woolen blanket, their faces pale from hunger, their eyes darting to Wulfrun, whose coughs puncture the silence like a hammer on stone, each one weaker than the last. Beornwulf kneels beside his mother, her skin clammy under his touch, her eyes half open but unfocused. And he feels a pang of dread knowing the herbs Sinbad crushed last night fever few, and willow bark are doing little to hold back the illness that claims so many in winters like this. As Bede records in his accounts of mortality in early Britain, the family gathers around the fire, the air heavy with the scent of smoke and the faint bitterness of yesterday's pottage, now gone. replaced by a thinner gruel of barley and a single dried onion, portioned out in wooden bowls so small they seem more ritual than meal. Sinberg's hands tremble slightly as she serves, her eyes meeting Beornwulf's, both acknowledging the unspoken truth: the pig's death today will mean food, but at the cost of their last hope for spring breeding. Elfric eats quickly, his gaze fixed on his father, eager yet nervous for the task ahead, while Leofgifu and Edith pick at their portions, their chatter subdued, sensing the weight of the day. Beornwulf speaks softly, explaining the slaughter to Elfric, his voice steady but heavy. "We'll use every part, the blood, the bones, the meat. Nothing goes to waste," and Elfric nods, his young face set with a determination that makes Beornwulf's heart ache, for this is no game, but a lesson in the cost of life. The village outside stirs with the clatter of shovels and axes, men continuing the work of fortifying the palisade, their breaths clouding in the cold as they dig ditches, and sharpened stakes driven by the then Edric's warning of Danish raiders a threat, rooted in the Anglo-Saxon chronicles' accounts of early Viking incursions. Beornwulf steps outside, the snow crunching under his boots, the air sharp enough to sting his lungs, and leads Elfric to the small pen where their pig, a lean creature with bristly hair, grunts softly, unaware of its fate. The pen is a rough enclosure of woven branches, its floor matted with straw and frozen mud, and Beornwulf checks the ropes and knife, their edges honed last night, his hand steady despite the weight in his chest. Sinberg follows, carrying a clay pot to catch the blood, her face calm but her eyes tight with resolve, knowing the meat will feed them but the loss will echo into spring. Leofgifu and Edith stay inside, tasked with tending Wulfrun, their small hands busy with a rush mat, their voices hushed as they avoid the truth of what's happening outside. Beornwulf kneels beside Elfric, his voice low. "This is hard, but it's what keeps us alive. You'll hold the rope. Keep it steady, and I'll do the rest," and Elfric nods, his hands gripping the rope, his knuckles white against the cold. The pig squeals as Beornwulf ties its legs, its eyes wide with panic, and he moves quickly, his knife flashing in the grey light, the cut clean and deep, the blood spilling into Sinberg's pot, its warmth steaming in the frigid air. Elfric flinches but holds firm, his face pale but unflinching, learning the brutal necessity of survival in all Wythe. The act is over quickly, the pig's struggles fading, and Beornwulf works with practiced efficiency, gutting and skinning, his hands slick with blood, the smell sharp and metallic, a stark contrast to the snow's clean scent. Sinberg collects the organs and movements precise, already planning the blood pudding and broth that will sustain them, while Beornwulf saves the bones, knowing they'll be boiled for marrow, or carved into tools as archaeological finds from Coppergate reveal of Anglo-Saxon resourcefulness. Elfric watches, silent now, his earlier eagerness replaced by a quiet understanding, the weight of the act settling into his young mind. They carry the meat inside, the cold preserving it for now, and Sinberg sets to work, salting portions with their precious store, her hands moving with the rhythm of survival. Each cut a calculation to stretch their food through the weeks ahead. Wulfrun stirs, her cough weaker now, and Sinberg pauses to offer her a sip of warmed water, the old woman's eyes flickering with gratitude but dimming with each breath. Beornwulf watches, his heart torn between the relief of food secured and the fear of losing his mother, a loss that feels like another thread of Allwither's past unraveling. The children gather around, Leofgifu and Edith staring at the meat, their hunger warring with the memory of the pig they fed through autumn. And Beornwulf speaks softly, telling them of winters when his own father did the same, a story to ground them in the cycle of survival, not unlike the tales elders shared in Bedtime. The morning wears on, the snow falling relentlessly, and Beornwulf prepares to join the men at the palisade, his axe at his belt, his hands still stained with blood despite washing in snow. Elfric asks to come, his voice eager, but Beornwulf shakes his head. "Stay with your mother. Help with the meat. There's work enough here," and Elfric nods, his disappointment clear, but his duty understood. Sinberg begins boiling the blood with barley, the scent of pudding filling the house, a rare promise of fullness that lifts the children's spirits. Though Wulfrun can only manage a few sips, her strength fading like the light outside. Beornwulf steps into the village, the snow now ankle deep, the air thick with the promise of a storm, and joins the men at the palisade where Edric oversees the work, his wolfskin cloak dusted white, his voice sharp as he directs the placement of stakes. The men work in grim silence, their shovels striking frozen earth, their faces etched with the fear of what may come. The rumors of Danish sails now a near certainty, whispered among them like a curse. Osric, Beornwulf's neighbor, swings an axe beside him, his breath clouding as he speaks of a trader who saw longships near the coast, their crews hardened men who fear neither storm nor spear. Beornwulf nods, his mind on the ditches, their shallow trenches of frail hope against such a force. But he swings his shovel harder, the ache in his arms a distraction from the dread in his chest. The village hums with activity, women preserving food, children gathering sticks, elders sharing stories of past raids, their voices low but steady, weaving a tapestry of resilience that holds Aldwythe together. Back home, Sinberg works tirelessly, her hands deft as she salts meat and stirs the pudding. The fire burning brighter now, fueled by the last of their morning wood. Elfric helps, his small hands clumsy but eager, learning to pack the meat in clay pots. His questions about raiders met with Sinberg's calm answers. We prepare, we stay strong, we trust in each other. Lefgifu and Edith sit by Wulfrun, their rush mat finished, now braiding strips of cloth into cords, their fingers moving to keep fear at bay. Wulfrun's cough grows quieter, her breaths shallow, and Sinberg kneels beside her, offering a paste of crushed herbs, her voice soft with prayers, a blend of Christian pleas and older chants, a practice common in Aldwythe, the syncretic faith as Bede describes. The day stretches on, the snow piling higher, the cold seeping into bones, and Beornwulf returns at midday, his cloak heavy with frost, his hands blistered from digging. The family gathers around the fire, the blood pudding ready now, its warmth a rare comfort. The Wulfrun cannot eat, her eyes closed, her breathing a faint whisper. They share the meal in silence, the pudding rich but heavy with the knowledge of what it cost. And Beornwulf speaks of the palisade, the stakes sharpen the ditches deeper, though he knows they're no match for a determined raid. Elfric listens, his stick spear by his side, and asks if the Danes will come soon, his voice steady. But his eyes wide, and Beornwulf answers will be ready, though his heart doubts. The weight of survival pressing harder with each passing hour. Sinberg clears the bowls, her movements deliberate, and begins preparing more meat for smoking. The fire's smoke curling up to the roof, mingling with the cold air that leaks through the walls. The children return to their tasks, Lefgifu teaching Edith to knot the cords, their small hands working in unison, a quiet defiance of the winter's grip. Beornwulf checks the storage pit again, the meat now adding to their stores, a fragile buffer against starvation. But the sight of the dwindling roots reminds him of the spring they may not reach. He thinks of the Then's Hall, of Edric's call to stand together, and feels a spark of resolve, not just to survive but to protect, to hold Aldwythe's fragile balance against the chaos that threatens. The afternoon brings a lull in the snow, the sky a heavy grey, and Beornwulf prepares to return to the palisade, his axe heavier now, not just a tool but a symbol of what he may face. Sinberg stops him, her hand on his arm, her voice low. If they come, keep Elfric safe. And he nods, the promise of vow etched into his soul. He steps outside, the village quieter now, the men's work slowing as the light fades, their faces drawn with exhaustion but hardened with purpose. Osric joins him, his axe slung over his shoulder, and speaks of a plan to set watches at night, a precaution against the raiders who may strike under cover of darkness. Beornwulf agrees, his mind on the hall, where Edric will assign the first watch tonight, a duty he knows he'll take, his body weary but his will unbroken. The palisade looms ahead, its stakes jagged against the sky, a frail barrier that feels more like hope than certainty. The men work until dusk, their tools striking in rhythm, their breaths a steady cloud in the cold. And Beornwulf feels the village's pulse, a community bound by shared fear and shared strength. As the light fades, he trudges home, the snow crunching underfoot, the air sharp with the promise of night. Inside, the fire burns low, Sinberg tending it with care, the meat now packed and smoking, the house filled with the scent of survival. Elfric sits by Wulfrun, his stick spear forgotten, his hand holding hers, her coughs now barely audible, her life slipping away like the embers. Lefgifu and Edith sleep, their small forms curled together, and Sinberg looks at Beornwulf, her eyes asking the question neither dares voice. How long can they hold on? He sits beside her, the fire's glow casting shadows that dance like ghosts, and speaks of the palisade, the watches, the hope that their work will be enough. She nods, her hand finding his, and they sit in silence, the weight of the day settling around them, the pigs sacrifice a fleeting victory in a winter that demands more. Wulfrun stirs a voice, a whisper telling a fragment of a story about a winter when Allwithe stood against raiders, a tale half-remembered, but heavy with truth, and Beornwulf listens, his heart torn between past and present, knowing the night ahead will bring new challenges. The village sleeps under its blanket of snow, the palisade a dark line against the horizon, and Beornwulf lies awake, his family's breathing a steady rhythm. The fire's glow a promise of warmth that may not last. The watches will begin tonight, the men standing guard against a threat that grows closer with each rumor, and Beornwulf feels the weight of his axe, his duty, his love for his family, each a thread in the fragile tapestry of Allwithe survival. What would you sacrifice to keep your loved ones alive? When every choice carries the weight of life and death, share your thoughts in the comments, and let's see how Allwithe faces the night, where whispers of danger draw closer and the village's strength will be tested in ways no one can predict. The night falls over Allwithe like a heavy cloak, the snow piling high against the Waterland Dorp homes, its weight muffling the village into an eerie silence broken only by the windless low moan and the faint crackle of fires struggling to hold back the cold. Beornwulf lies awake, his family's steady breathing a fragile anchor in the darkness. The fire in their home reduced to a dull glow that casts long shadows across the dirt floor, where the scent of smoked meat and blood pudding lingers, a reminder of the pig's sacrifice earlier that day. Sinbog sleeps fitfully beside him, her hand resting on little Edith, whose small form curls tightly against her mother, while Elfric and Lefgafu share a blanket, their faces peaceful despite the hunger that gnaws at them all. Wulfrun's coughs have grown faint, each breath a labored whisper, her life slipping away as the cold deepens. A fate Bede describes as all too common in the winters of early Britain, when illness reaps what hunger spares. Beornwulf's thoughts churn the then Edric's words from the meeting, echoing Danish raiders' longships, sighted ditches and stakes, and he grips his axe, its handle worn smooth by years of use, now a lifeline, as he prepares for the night watch assigned at dusk. The village outside is a world of frost and fear, the palisades sharpened stakes, standing like teeth against the snow, a frail defense against the sea wolves, who strike even in winter, as the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records of early Viking incursions. Beornwulf rises quietly, careful not to wake his family, and pulls on his cloak, the wool heavy with damp, its warmth fleeting as he steps into the biting cold, the snow crunching under his boots, the air sharp enough to steal his breath. The sky is a vast blackness, stars hidden by clouds, and the village feels smaller, hemmed in by the forest's dark edge where danger lurks unseen. He makes his way to the palisade's northern approach, where Osric waits, his breath clouding in the faint torchlight, his axe slung over his shoulder, his face etched with the same resolve. Beornwulf feels a shared determination to protect Allwithe's fragile existence. The watch is silent at first, the men stamping their feet to keep warm, their eyes scanning the forest for any sign of movement, the cold seeping into their bones, making every moment a test of endurance. Osric speaks low, his voice barely above the wind. They say the Danes come at night, silent as wolves. And Beornwulf nods, his hand tightening on his axe, his mind on his family, safe for now in their home, but vulnerable if the raiders breach the palisade. The hours drag, the cold a relentless enemy, and Beornwulf thinks of Wulfrun, her stories of past winters, of raids survived, her wisdom a thread connecting Allwithe to its past, now fading with her life. A sudden sound, a twig snapping in the forest, snaps him to alertness, his heart pounding as he peers into the darkness, Osric's hand on his spear, both men frozen, listening. It's only a deer, its eyes glinting in the torchlight before it bounds away. But the moment leaves them tense, their nerves frayed by the weight of waiting. The watch ends with the moon high, another villager taking Beornwulf's place, and he trudges home. The snow deeper now, his boots sinking with each step, his thoughts heavy with the fear of what dawn may bring. Inside, the fire has burned low, Sinbog awake now, tending it with a small stick, her eyes meeting his, asking the question she doesn't voice. Any sign of them? He shakes his head, no, not yet, but the words feel hollow. The threat as real as the cold that clings to his cloak. Wulfrun stirs, her cough barely audible, and Sinberg kneels beside her, offering a sip of warmed water mixed with willow bark. Her hands gentle, but her face tight with worry, knowing the herbs are failing. Elfric wakes, his eyes bright in the firelight, and asks about the watch, his voice eager. And Beornwulf answers softly, all quiet, but stay sharp, you'll help tomorrow, a promise. That weighs heavy, for he knows the boy's courage may soon be tested. The family settles back to sleep, the children curled together. The fire's glow a faint comfort against the night's chill. But Beornwulf lies awake, his mind on the palisade, the stakes, the ditches, and the men who stand within their lives bound by the need to survive. Morning breaks with a pale, unforgiving light, the snow still falling. The village a blur of white and grey, its homes huddled against the cold like weary travellers. Beornwulf rises, rekindling the fire, his hands stiff but practiced, the flint sparking under his strikes. A small victory that feels hollow as Wulfrun's breathing grows weaker, her face pale as the snow outside. Sinberg prepares a thin gruel, this time with a sliver of the pig's meat, its richness a rare gift that brings a flicker of joy to Aegeath's face, though she eats slowly. Her eyes on her grandmother, sensing the end that looms. Elfric and Lefgifu help with small tasks, fetching water, stacking wood, their hands moving to keep fear at bay, while Sinberg tends to Wulfrun, her herbs now a ritual of hope more than healing. Beornwulf steps outside, the village alive with the clatter of tools, men returning to the palisade, women preserving food, children scurrying with bundles of sticks, their laughter faint but defiant. He joins the men, his axe at his belt, his hands still sore from yesterday's digging, and finds Edric at the palisade, his wolfskin cloak dusted with snow. His voice sharp as he assigns tasks, sharpen more stakes, deepen the ditches, set traps. Beyond the perimeter, Beornwulf swings his axe-cutting stakes to jagged points, each strike a release of the tension that builds with every rumor of raiders, their longships now a shadow over all Wythe, as real as the hunger that gnaws at them all. Osric works beside him, his breath clouding, and speaks of a traveller who saw smoke on the coast, a sign of Danish camps, a detail that echoes the chronicle's accounts of early raids. The men work through the morning, their hands blistered, their faces grim, knowing their efforts may only delay the inevitable. At midday, Beornwulf returns home, the snow heavier now, the cold a living thing that claws at his skin, and finds Sinberg stirring a pot of broth, the pig's bones simmering, the scent filling the house with a promise of sustenance. Elfric sits by Wulfrun, holding her hand, his face pale, and Beornwulf kneels beside them, his heart sinking as he sees his mother's eyes, clouded now, her breath barely a whisper. Sinberg speaks softly, she's fading, we'll need to prepare soon, and Beornwulf nods, the weight of loss settling over him, a grief as heavy as the snow outside. The children eat in silence, the broth warm but thin, and Lefgifu asks if Wulfrun will get better. Her voice small, and Beornwulf answers, we pray for her, but God decides. A truth that feels cruel, but necessary, rooted in the faith that blends old ways and new in all Wythe. The afternoon brings a summons from Edric, a runner boy no older than Elfric, breathless in the snow, calling all men to the hall for news, urgent, the then says, come now. Beornwulf kisses Sinberg, his hand lingering on hers, and tells Elfric to stay, guard the house. A task that makes the boy stand taller, his stick spear clutched tight. The hall is packed, the air thick with smoke and sweat, men crowded on benches, their faces tense as Edric speaks, his voice cutting through the murmurs. A scout saw longships land at dawn, not far. They'll come tonight or tomorrow. We must be ready. The words land like a blow, the men shifting, gripping spears and axes, their fear a tangible thing. But Edric's presence steadies them, his plan clear. We hold the palisade, we fight as one. We protect our own. Beornwulf feels his heart pound, his thoughts on his family, on Wulfrun's fading life. On the stakes he sharpened, each a fragile hope against the chaos to come. The meeting ends with assignments, Beornwulf tasked with the northern watch again. His axe now a weapon, not a tool. And he returns home as dusk falls, the snow a relentless curtain, the village quieter now, braced for what's coming. Inside, Sinberg has prepared Wulfrun for her final hours, her body wrapped in a clean cloth, her face peaceful despite the cough that no longer comes. her life slipping away as the fire burns low. The children gather round, their eyes wet but silent, and Beornwulf speaks a prayer. Half Christian, half old words, a farewell to the woman who tied them to Allwither's past. Elfric clings to his father, his voice breaking. Will we bury her tomorrow? And Beornwulf nods. When the ground allows, knowing the frozen earth will make even this act a struggle. As Bede notes of winter burials, the family sits in vigil, the fire's glow casting Wulfrun's shadow on the wall. A ghost already fading, and Beornwulf feels the weight of loss, of duty, of the night ahead. A sudden bell rings, sharp and urgent, shattering the silence. The village's alarm, raiders now. At the palisade, Beornwulf grabs his axe, his heart racing, and kisses Sinberg, his voice fierce, bar the door. Keep them safe, and she nods, her eyes fierce with resolve. Pulling the children close as he steps into the night. The snow swirls, the air alive with shouts, the clatter of weapons. The flicker of torches along the palisade, where men rush to their posts, their breaths clouding in the cold. Beornwulf joins Osric and 3 others, Leofstan, a weary farmer, Godric, a stout man with a spear, and Wulfric, a young man barely older than Elfric, their faces pale but determined. The raiders come as shadows, a small scouting party, their figures dark against the snow, moving silent and swift, testing the palisade with quick strikes, their axes glinting in the torchlight. Beornwulf swings his axe, striking a hand that grips the stakes, a cry of pain echoing as the raider falls back, and Osric thrusts his spear, driving another away. The fight is brief but chaotic, the cold numbing their hands, the snow slipping underfoot, and Beornwulf feels a sharp pain in his arm, a shallow cut from a glancing blade, blood warm against his skin. Leofstan takes a blow to the head, staggering, dazed, and Godric is wounded, his leg bleeding. But Osric and Wulfric hold firm, their shouts rallying the defenders. The raiders retreat, their purpose unclear, perhaps to test Allwither's strength, and Beornwulf binds his wound with a strip of his tunic, the pain sharp but bearable. As Osric urges him, keep it tight, we'll need you for the next one. The village pulses with tension, women like Sinberg tending the wounded in the center, their hands steady with herbs and cloth. As archaeological finds from West Stowe show of communal caring crisis, Beornwulf helps Leofstan to his feet, the man's eyes unfocused but alive, and they move toward the hall where Edric's voice rings out, fall back to the inner palisade. Hold the center, a wise order to consolidate their dwindling numbers, as the chronicle describes of early Anglo-Saxon defenses. The night is far from over, the raiders' shadows still lurking beyond the torches, and Beornwulf feels the weight of his axe, his wound, his family waiting in the hall, their safety a fragile hope in the chaos. Could you stand against such a threat, with only an axe and your will to protect your own? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's see how Allwither endures. As the night grows darker and the true test of their strength looms just beyond the palisade, the night in Allwither pulses with chaos, the air thick with the acrid scent of smoke and the sharp tang of blood, as torches flicker along the inner palisade, casting jagged shadows that dance like specters across the snow. Beornwulf grips his axe, his wounded arm throbbing beneath the makeshift bandage torn from his tunic, the pain a dull fire that fuels his resolve as he takes his place among the defenders, their breaths clouding in the frigid air, their faces set with a grim determination to hold the village's heart. Osric stands beside him, his spear steady, despite the blood seeping from a shallow cut on his shoulder, while Leof stands still dazed. From a blow to the head leans heavily on a stake, his eyes unfocused, but his will unbroken. Godric, his leg bound tightly, hobbles to join them, and Wulfric, the young man with fire in his eyes, clutches a borrowed axe, his youth no barrier to the fight. The inner palisade, a low ring of sharpened stakes surrounding the hall, church and grain stores, is Allwither's last stand, a fragile barrier against the Danish raiders who now press closer, their shouts and the clash of weapons echoing beyond the torchlight. As described in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles accounts of early Viking assaults, Beornwulf's heart pounds, his thoughts on Sinberg and the children, safe for now in the hall, but vulnerable if the raiders breach this line, and he scans the darkness, his axe heavy with the weight of their survival. The village center hums with activity, women like Sinberg tending the wounded with herbs and cloth, their hands swift despite the fear that grips them, as archaeological finds from West Stowe reveal of communal care in times of crisis. A boy runner, no older than Elfric, darts through the snow, his voice breathless as he relays Edric's orders, hold the line, no one falls back, and Beornwulf feels a surge of pride. For all why there's unity, every man, woman and child bound by the need to endure. The torches along the palisade burn low, their light barely piercing the night, and Beornwulf stamps his feet to keep the cold at bay, his breath a white plume that mingles with the smoke. Osric whispers, they'll come soon, they're testing us, and Beornwulf nods, his eyes fixed on the forest's edge, where shadows shift like wolves in the dark. The memory of Wulfrun's death hours ago, her body now wrapped and waiting in the hall, weighs on him. Her stories of past raids a grim reminder that Allwithe has faced such nights before, surviving through sheer will, as beat notes of Anglo-Saxon resilience. The silence shatters with a cry from the western palisade, they're coming many of them, and Beornwulf braces himself, his axe raised, as dozens of raiders emerge from the darkness, not the small scouting party of before, but the full force, their shields glinting, their axes and swords flashing in the torchlight. The night erupts into chaos, shouts and screams mingling with the clash of steel. Arrows whizzing from both sides, some striking flesh, others vanishing into the snow. Beornwulf swings his axe, the impact jarring his wounded arm as he strikes a raider climbing the palisade. The man's cry lost in the din as he falls back. Osric thrusts his spear through the stakes, driving another attacker away, while Wulfric hacks wildly, his youth fueling his ferocity, and Godric, despite his wound, holds his ground, his spear steady. The raiders are relentless, their numbers overwhelming, their organization marking them as professionals, not mere bandits. A detail rooted in the chronicle's descriptions of early Viking tactics. A section of the palisade near Beornwulf splinters under concentrated axe blows, the wood cracking like thunder, and he shouts, "Brace it," as defenders rush to push against the weakening stakes, their shoulders straining to hold the line. Women join the fight now, those without young children or skilled with bows, their arrows arcing into the dark, a shift in gender roles common in crisis, as archaeological evidence suggests of Anglo-Saxon communal defense. Beornwulf's heart races, his arm burning with each swing, but he fights on, driven by the thought of his family in the hall, their safety hanging on this moment. Edric moves among the defenders, his wolfskin cloak torn, his voice a steady anchor, hold fast. We are all Allwithe, and he pauses by Beornwulf, noting his bandaged arm. Still strong enough to swing that axe? Beornwulf nods, testing his grip, the pain sharp but manageable, I can fight. And Edric claps his shoulder, good, we'll need every man before dawn. The raiders press harder, their shields raised as they climb, their axes splintering more of the palisade, and Beornwulf feels the line waver. The defenders stretched thin, their numbers too few to hold forever. A sudden cry pierces the chaos father, and Beornwulf's blood freezes, his head whipping around, to see Elfric running across the open space between the palisade and the hall, his arms laden with spears, his small figure vulnerable in the torchlight. Beornwulf shouts, "Get back!" Terror gripping his heart as he sees raiders register the boy's presence, a spear raised to strike. Time slows, the world narrowing to Elfric's wide eyes, the glint of the Danish spear, the splintering palisade, and Beornwulf moves without thought, abandoning his post, sprinting toward his son, his axe swinging in a desperate arc to fellow raider in his path, the man collapsing with a grunt. Elfric drops flat, the spear whizzing over him, and Beornwulf reaches him, grabbing his tunic, dragging him behind a stack of barrels as more raiders pour through a widening gap in the palisade. Run now, Beornwulf orders, pushing Elfric toward the hall, and this time the boy obeys. Scrambling away, his small form disappearing into the shadows, Beornwulf turns, facing the raiders, his axe raised, knowing he can't stop them alone but determined to buy time, his heart pounding with a father's love and a warrior's resolve. The palisade breaches in multiple places, the stakes splintering under relentless blows, and raiders flood the village center, their shouts a foreign tongue that chills the blood. As Bede describes of Viking incursions, defenders retreat in small groups, fighting desperately, some falling under Danish blades, their cries lost in the chaos. Beornwulf parries a sword, the impact sending shockwaves through his wounded arm, and steps back. Another raider joining the first, then a third, their eyes cold with purpose. An arrow strikes the nearest Dane, giving Beornwulf a moment to disengage, and he runs toward the hall, his breath ragged, his arm bleeding freely now, the bandage torn away in combat. The village is a maelstrom of fire and shadow, torches extinguished at the outer defenses. The inner palisade lit only by a few flickering flames, and Beornwulf sees villagers making desperate dashes for the hall and church, some cut down, others pulled inside by those already sheltering. He reaches the hall, its heavy oak doors swinging open as a defender, Osric's brother, recognizes him and pulls him through, the door slamming shut, barred with thick beams that shudder under the first blows from outside. Inside, the hall is packed, a crush of bodies, women, children, elders, and retreating defenders, the air thick with smoke and fear. The central hearth's fire casting a meager glow. Beornwulf's eyes search frantically, finding Sinberg near the hearth, Elfric clinging to her. Lefgafu and Edith huddled close, all unharmed. Elfric runs to him, father, his voice breaking with relief, and Beornwulf kneels. Torn between anger and gratitude, you shouldn't have been out there. But his arms wrap around his son, the warmth of his small body a lifeline in the chaos. Sinberg joins them, her hand on his wounded arm, her eyes wide. But steady, you're hurt, and he shakes his head. It's nothing, though the pain tells a different story. Elfric explains, his voice small but defiant, they needed spears, I was helping. And Beornwulf feels a surge of pride, tempered by the terror of what might have been, knowing his son's courage could have cost his life. Edric strides through the hall, his face grim, blood splattered on his cloak, whether his own or a raider's unclear, and his voice rises above the murmurs. They've surrounded us, they're trying to burn us out. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd, the fear of fire a primal dread in a world of timber and thatch, as archaeological evidence from burned settlements confirms. The smell of smoke seeps through the walls, the crackle of flames audible outside. The raiders piling wood against the hall, their foreign voices calling in the darkness. Beornwulf holds his family close, his axe still in hand, his wounded arm throbbing, but his grip steady, knowing that fire could force them out to face blades or burn within. Sinberg whispers we could try the hiding place, the old badger den in the woods. A desperate plan passed down through generations, but Beornwulf shakes his head to far too many. We stay together, his voice firm despite the fear that claws at him. The hall grows hotter, smoke curling under the door, stinging eyes and throats, children whimpering, mothers hushing them with urgent whispers. Edric moves among the villagers, his presence a steadying force. We hold as long as we can. The smoke will draw help, though his tone carries little hope the king's fired too far to reach them in time. As beat notes of isolated settlements, Beornwulf looks at Elfric, Lefgafu, Edith, their faces pale in the firelight, and feels a cold determination. If the raiders break through, they'll face his axe first. The smoke thickens, the hall a trap now, and Beornwulf's mind races, searching for a way to protect his family, to hold Allwither's heart against the fire and steel outside. A sudden sound cuts through the tension, a horn blast, long and clear, from beyond the village. Then another, answered by a third, the raiders' voices shifting to alarm. The sounds of fighting erupting anew, not at the hall but at the village's edges. Edric strides to the center, his voice rising, the fired, the king's men, they've come. And a ripple of hope passes through the crowd, a miracle in the darkest hour, as the chronicle records of unexpected rescues. The smoke still seeps in, but no new fires flare against the walls, and the sounds of battle grow louder, the clash of weapons, the thunder of hooves. The king's warriors driving the raiders back. Beornwulf holds Sinberg's hand, her fingers tight around his, and they wait. The minutes stretching like hours, the children coughing in the smoky air, their small bodies pressed close. A pounding at the door breaks the tension, open in the king's name, and Edric nods, his men lifting the bars. The door swinging open to admit a gust of frigid air that clears the smoke. A warrior stands framed in the doorway, his mail shirt bloodied, his shield bearing the king's device, his voice steady. The village is secured. The Danes flee into the forest. A ragged cheer rises, relief overwhelming fear, and villagers stream outside, desperate for fresh air, their breaths clouding in the cold. Beornwulf leads his family out, supporting Sinbog as she carries Edith, Elfric and Lefgifu clinging to his cloak, their eyes wide at the scene, King's men moving through the village, tending their wounded, guarding captured raiders, the snow trampled and bloodied, the palisade breached but standing. The night is far from over, the cold deepening, the village scarred but alive, and Beornwulf feels a fragile hope, his family whole, their home waiting, but the cost of survival still unfolding in the darkness. Could you hold your family together in such a night, where every moment tests your courage? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's see how Aldwythe rebuilds, as dawn approaches and the village faces the aftermath of a night that changed them forever. The dawn breaks over Aldwythe with a fragile, pale light, the snow-stained red and trampled underfoot, the village bearing the scars of the night's battle, yet standing defiant against the winter's grip. Beornwulf leads his family from the smoky hall, his wounded arm stiff but bandaged anew by Sinbog's steady hands, her face etched with exhaustion but lit with relief as she holds Edith close, Elfric and Lefgifu trailing behind, their eyes wide at the sight of their home still standing, its waterland daub walls untouched by the flames that threatened to consume the village. The air is sharp with cold, the scent of charred wood and blood mingling with the clean bite of snow, and Beornwulf's breath clouds as he surveys the wreckage, broken stakes jutting from the inner palisade, abandoned weapons scattered in the drifts, the king's men moving among the debris, their mail glinting in the early light. The raiders are gone, driven into the forest by the third's arrival, their retreat a fleeting victory for Aldwythe, as the Anglo-Saxon chronicle records of such clashes where survival hinged on timely aid. Beornwulf's heart is heavy with the cost 7 villagers dead, including Godric, whose wounded leg could not carry him through the fight, and Leofstan, whose dazed courage ended in a Danish blade, their bodies now laid out near the church wrapped in cloths by grieving kin. Osric, his shoulder-bound, joins Beornwulf, his voice roughly held, but at what price? And Beornwulf nods his thoughts on Wulfrun, whose death in the hall. Chaos feels like a quieter loss. Amidst the battle, told her body still waiting for burial in the frozen ground. Sinbog guides the children home, her steps slow but deliberate, the snow crunching underfoot, and Beornwulf follows, his axe now a weight at his belt, its blade dulled from the night's work. Inside, the fire is out, the hearth cold, but the smell of smoked meat lingers, a reminder of the pig's sacrifice that sustained them through the raid. Sinbog kneels to rekindle the embers, her hands trembling slightly, not from cold, but from the strain of the night, and Elfric helps, his small hands steady as he stacks kindling, his face marked by the memory of his reckless sprint. With the spears a moment that nearly cost his life, Lefgifu and Edith huddle together, their rush mats and braided cords forgotten, their eyes red from tears for Wulfrun, whose absence feels like a hole in the family's heart. Beornwulf sits by the hearth, his wounded arm aching, and speaks softly, "We're alive. We're together, that's what matters," his voice anchor for his children, though his own heart wrestles with grief and guilt for surviving when others did not. The village stirs with a weary rhythm, men clearing debris, women tending wounds, children fetching water, their small forms darting through the snow, their laughter faint but defiant, a spark of life amidst the ruin. A horn sounds, calling the villagers to the hall, and Beornwulf leads his family back. The snow deeper now, the cold a relentless foe that presses against their cloaks. The hall is less crowded now, the air clearer, the smoke dispersed, and Edric stands at the center, his wolfskin cloak torn, but his presence unbroken, his voice steady as he addresses the gathered. "We've lost much, but we stand. The king's men brought us food, grain, salted fish, enough to see us through." A murmur of relief ripples through the crowd, the spectre of starvation eased. A detail rooted in Bed's accounts of communal aid after crises. Edric honors the fallen, naming each Godric, Leofstan, 5 others, their sacrifices binding Aldwythe. Closer, and he speaks of the raiders' new strategy, not just plunder, but land a warning echoed in the chronicle of Viking ambitions in the 650s. Beornwulf listens, his arm throbbing, his thoughts on the future, knowing the Danes may return, their defeat only a pause in a larger struggle. Elfric stands close, his eyes on Edric, his small frame still clutching the stick spear, a symbol of his courage and his father's fear. Sinbog's hand rests on Lefgifu's shoulder, her face calm but her eyes searching beyond Wolf's. A silent question, "What now?" and he squeezes her hand, a promise to face whatever comes together. The meeting ends with plans to rebuild, to bury the dead when the ground thaws, to strengthen the palisade, and Edric announces the solstice, Modronict, is near, a time to honor both the old gods and the new, a tradition Bede describes as common in this era of syncretic faith. The villagers disperse, their steps lighter with the promise of food and the hope of renewal, and Beornwulf leads his family home, the snow falling softly now, the sky a pale grey that hints at clearer days. Inside, Sinberg lights the fire, its glow a fragile warmth, and begins preparing a meal with the king's grain, a thick pottage enriched with a sliver of pig's meat, the scent filling the house with a comfort that feels like a gift after the night's terror. Elfric helps, his hand steady as he grinds barley with a stone, his voice quiet. "I'm sorry I ran out there," and Beornwulf kneels, his hand on his son's shoulder. "You were brave, but you're my heart, don't risk it again." A moment of forgiveness that binds them closer. The memory of Elfric's danger are wound as real as the one on Beornwulf's arm. Lefgafu and Edith sit by the fire, their small hands busy with a cloth doll, a gift they plan to offer at Modronict. Their chatter a soft defiance of the grief that lingers for Wulfrun. Sinberg speaks of the solstice, "We'll go to the church, then the oak, will pray for strength." For Wulfrun's soul, her voice blending Christian hope with the old ways, a practice that holds Aldwyther's spirit together. The day passes with small tasks, Beornwulf joining the men to clear the palisade's debris. His arm sore but functional, his axe now a tool again, cutting away broken stakes. Osric works beside him, his shoulders stiff, but his spirit unbroken. And they speak of the third's leader, Wulfric's brother, a man named Ethelstan, whose timely arrival saved them a figure. Who could have stepped from the chronicle's tales of heroic rescues? The women prepare for Modronict, gathering offerings, dried herbs, small carvings, a jug of mead. Their hands moving with purpose, as archaeological finds from Coppergate show of solstice rituals. The children run messages, their boots slipping in the snow, their laughter louder now, a sign of life returning to Aldwythe. Beornwulf returns home at dusk, the sky clear for the first time in days, stars piercing the darkness, a promise of the solstice's light. The family eats together, the pottage warm and filling, a rare fullness that eases the ache of hunger, though Wulfrun's empty place at the hearth is a silent grief. Sinberg speaks of the oak sacred to their ancestors, where they'll offer the doll, and the church, where they'll pray for Wulfrun, her voice steady with hope. And Beornwulf nods, feeling the weight of survival lift, slightly replaced by a resolve to honor the past while facing the future. The village gathers at dusk, the snow glowing under torchlight, the air alive with the hum of voices, Christian and pagan blending in a shared rite, as Bede notes of early Anglo-Saxon faith. The church, a small wooden structure, stands open, its altar lit with candles, and the villagers file in, their prayers rising in Latin and the old tongue, a plea for strength, for protection, for the souls of the lost. Beornwulf kneels with his family, his wounded arm a dull ache, his heart full with the memory of Wulfrun, her stories now their legacy. Elfric whispers a prayer, his voice small but clear, for grandmother, for Aldwythe, and Beornwulf's eyes sting, his pride in his son a light in the darkness. The crowd moves to the sacred oak, its branches heavy with snow, its trunk carved with ancient runes. And they place offerings at its base, the doll from Lefgafu and Edith, a jug of mead from Sinberg, a carved stick from Elfric, each a symbol of hope of survival. Beornwulf adds a small stone, smoothed by his hands, a piece of Aldwyther's earth, and speaks softly. "For you, mother, for us, a vow to carry on." The solstice fire is lit, its flames leaping high, casting warmth across the gathered faces. A defiance of winter's cold, a ritual rooted in the old ways that binds the village together. Edric speaks, his voice carrying over the crackle of the fire. "We've endured, we'll rebuild, we are Aldwythe," and the villagers cheer their voices. A chorus of resilience, their hands linked in a circle. That includes even the youngest Edith's small fingers tight in Sinberg's. Beornwulf looks at his family, their faces lit by the flames, and feels a spark of hope. Not just for survival, but for a future where his children might know less peril a dream. That feels fragile, but real in the solstice's glow. The night deepens, the stars bright above, and the villagers linger, sharing mead and stories. Their laughter a defiance of the darkness, their unity a shield against what may come. Beornwulf and Sinbog lead their children home, the snow soft underfoot, the fire's warmth lingering in their hearts, and they settle by their own hearth, its embers glowing, a promise of warmth for the days ahead. Elfric asks, will the Danes come back? His voice steady, but his eyes searching. And Beornwulf answers, if they do, we'll be ready together, a truth that feels stronger now, forged in the night's fire and blood. Sinbog tucks the children into their blankets, her hands gentle, her prayers a whisper that blends old and new, and Beornwulf sits by the fire, his axe resting nearby, his wounded arm a reminder of what they've endured. The village sleeps under its blanket of snow, the solstice fire still burning in the distance, a beacon of resilience that lights Allwither's path forward. The story of this winter has been one of loss, of courage, of survival. But what does it mean to endure such a season, to hold fast against cold, hunger and fear? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's step back to reflect on Allwither's journey, to see what their struggle tells us about the strength that binds us all, then and now. The embers of the Modronicht fire glow faintly in Allwither's heart, their warmth lingering in the snow-draped night, a fragile beacon against the vast darkness that cloaks the village. As the stars above burn bright, casting a silver light over the scarred palisade, the trampled snow, the homes that stand defiant despite the wounds of battle. Beornwulf sits by his family's hearth, the fire now a steady flame, its crackle a soft counterpoint to the wind's low moan outside, the scent of smoked meat, and barley pottage filling the small Waterland Daub home, a reminder of the sacrifices that brought them through the winter's darkest hours. Sinbog kneels beside him, her hands still stained with the herbs she used to tend his wounded arm, her face softened by the firelight, but etched with the weight of their losses, Wulfrun's death, the 7 villagers fallen to the Danish blades, the fear that gripped them in the hall smoky. Chaos! Elfric, Lefgifu, and Edith sleep under their shared blanket, their breaths steady, their small forms curled together, the cloth doll they offered at the sacred oak now a memory of their hope, their resilience, their survival. Beornwulf's arm aches, the bandage tight against the shallow cut, but the pain feels distant, overshadowed by the gratitude that floods his heart. His family is alive, their home intact, their village unbroken, a miracle in a season that offered little mercy. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle speaks of such winters when communities like Allwither faced hunger, cold, and raiders, yet endured through unity and will, and Beornwulf feels that legacy in his bones, a thread connecting his family to the past, to Wulfrun's stories, to the earth beneath their feet. He looks at Sinbog, her eyes meeting his, and they share a silent vow to carry on, to rebuild, to teach their children the strength that saw them through. The village outside is quiet now, the snow falling softly, blanketing the blood and debris. A clean slate for the days ahead, though the scars of the raid remain, broken stakes, charred patches, the empty places where neighbors once stood. Beornwulf rises, stepping to the door, the cold air sharp as he peers into the night. The solstice fire still burning in the distance, its glow a promise that Allwither's spirit endures. He thinks of Edric the then, whose steady voice rallied them, of Osric, whose spear held the line of Ethelstan and the king's men, whose timely arrival turned the tide, a story that could have been lifted. From Bed's accounts of communal survival, the memory of Wulfrun lingers, her cough silenced, her stories now theirs to carry, and Beornwulf feels her presence in the fire's warmth, in the children's steady breathing, in the village's stubborn refusal to break. Sinbog joins him, her hand resting on his shoulder, and they stand together, the night stretching vast around them, the stars a reminder of the world beyond Allwither, a world of peril but also possibility. The morning brings a new rhythm to the village, the clatter of tools as men repair the palisade, the soft hum of women grinding grain from the king's stalls, the laughter of children darting through the snow, their voices brighter now freed from the shadow of starvation. Beornwulf takes Elfric to the storage pit, their footsteps crunching in the fresh snow, and they check the meat and grain, the king's gift, a lifeline that promises weeks of sustenance, a relief that feels like a gift from the gods, old and new. Elfric, his stick spear left behind, asks about rebuilding, his voice steady. Will we make the palisade stronger? And Beornwulf nods, teaching him to tally the stakes needed, a lesson in planning as much as survival, his son's eyes bright with the spark of responsibility. Sinberg and the girls work inside, Lefgefu and Edith learning to weave a new rush mat. Their small hands deft despite the cold, their chatter a soft echo of Wulfrun's storytelling. A way to keep her memory alive. Sinberg prepares another pottage, this time with a generous scoop of grain. The scent rich and comforting, and she speaks of the spring when we'll plant again, when the ground thaws. Her voice a quiet defiance of the winter's grip, a hope rooted in the cycles of life that Bede describes in his accounts of Anglo-Saxon faith. The village gathers at midday, called by Edric to the church, its wooden walls still standing, its altar lit with candles that flicker like stars in the dimness. The then speaks of the fallen, their names carved into a wooden plank, Godric, Leof Stan. The others, a memorial to bind Allwither's grief into strength, a practice echoed in archaeological finds of early Christian sites. Beornwulf stands with his family, his arm around Sinberg, Elfric's hand in his, and they pray. Their voices blending Latin with older words, a syncretic ritual that honors Wulfrun and the village's endurance. Edric announces plans to bury the dead when the ground softens, to rebuild the palisade taller, to train more men for the fired, a resolve that echoes the chronicle's tales of communities rising from raids. The villagers nod, their faces weary but determined, their hands linked in a shared purpose that feels stronger than the cold. Beornwulf thinks of Elfric's reckless courage, running spears through the raid, and feels a mix of pride and fear, knowing his son's spirit will carry Allwither's future, but praying it won't cost him as it did others. The day unfolds with quiet purpose, Beornwulf joining the men to clear more debris, his axe cutting away broken wood, his arm sore but healing, a testament to Sinberg's care. Osric works beside him, his shoulder stiff but his humor returning, joking about the Danes running faster than deer, a lightness that lifts the men's spirits, their laughter a defiance of the night's terror. Women like Sinberg share the king's grain, portioning it with care, their hands moving in rhythm, as archaeological evidence from Coppergate shows of communal food distribution. Children play in the snow, their games now tinged with the memory of the raid, their wooden swords mimicking the Third's charge, a sign of resilience that warms Beornwulf's heart. Elfric joins them, no longer carrying his stick spear, his play a balance of boyhood and the maturity forced upon him, and Beornwulf watches, his thoughts on the lessons he must teach, not just of survival, but of hope. The afternoon brings a rare break in the clouds, the sun a pale disk, that casts long shadows across the snow, and Beornwulf takes his family to the sacred oak, its branches still heavy with offerings from Modronic, the cloth doll, the jug of mead. The carved stick each a symbol of Allwither's survival. They add another offering, a small braid of Lefgefu's hair, a gift for Wulfrun's soul, a gesture rooted in the old ways that Bede notes as lingering in Christian Britain. Sinberg speaks softly for peace, for strength, for spring, her voice a prayer that blends faith and memory, and Beornwulf feels the weight of their journey, the hunger, the raid, the loss, all woven into this moment of quiet hope. Elfric asks, will we be safe now? His voice steady but searching, and Beornwulf answers, we'll make ourselves safe together, a promise that feels stronger in the sunlight. The village's unity is shield against the future. The evening settles over Allwither, the snow glowing under the stars. The villagers' fires burning brighter now, fueled by the king's wood, a luxury that feels like a blessing. Beornwulf and Sinberg sit by their hearth, the children asleep, their faces peaceful in the firelight, the pottage pot empty, but the promise of more meals easing the fear that haunted them. They speak of Wulfrun, her stories of past winters, her courage that carried them through, and Beornwulf feels her absence like a wound, but also her presence in the family's strength, in Elfric's bravery, in Sinberg's steady hands, in the children's laughter. The village outside hums with life, neighbors sharing food, stories, plans. Their voices a chorus of survival that echoes the chronicle's tales of communities that endured. Beornwulf thinks of Edric, of the palisade they'll rebuild, of the spring they'll plant, and feels a spark of hope, not just for survival, but for a future where his children might know less fear, less hunger, less loss. Sinberg's hand finds his, her fingers warm despite the cold, and they sit in silence, the fire's glow a testament to their endurance, a light that holds back the dark. The night deepens, the stars bright above, and Allwither sleeps, its scars a map of its strength, its fires a promise of renewal. Beowulf reflects on the winter, its brutal lessons, its fleeting victories, the pig's sacrifice, the raid's terror, the solstice's hope, and sees in them a truth that stretches beyond all wide to every soul who faces the dark and chooses to fight, to love, to endure. The villager's story is one of resilience, of unity, of the human spirit that burns brighter than any fire, a legacy that lives in the Anglo-Saxon chronicles' accounts of survival, embeds tales of faith in the artifacts of West Stowe and Coppergate that speak of a people who refused to break. Beowulf looks at his family, their faces lit by the embers, and knows their story is not just theirs, but ours, a mirror held up to our own struggles, our own hopes, our own will to carry on. What does Allwither's winter teach us about the strength we carry within, about the bonds that hold us together when the world grows cold? Share your reflections in the comments, and if this journey through time has moved you, hit that subscribe button to join History Orbit for more stories of the past that light our way forward. Let's step back from Allwither, from its snows and fires, to ask what their endurance means for us today. What lessons we can carry into our own battles, our own winters, our own hopes for spring.